Hello, doers of the world. Today we're gonna turn this into, drumroll, boom, this. And I'm gonna give you so many helpful tips and tricks along the way to make your process easier for when you decide you want to add a little extra flair to whatever space it is that you're living in right now. Time to clear out the room so we can tear out the carpet. And whenever you're starting a carpet removal, it is best to remove all of the trim that is encasing your room. When removing trim, the best tool that I have found to do so is a 7-in-1 painter's tool. And you can get them at most hardware stores, and you use a hammer on the end of that tool. It has a very narrow end to it, so it does not damage the trim. You might as well go out and buy one now. A 7-in-1 painter's tool. It works amazing. When removing carpet, it's best to remove it in small sections. You want to go with the carpet's grain. That is going to make your life a whole heck of a lot easier. Grab a very sharp utility knife and rock away by section and then roll it up. Cut a section, roll it up. Cut a section, roll it up, and you will be good to go. On to the next section. Whoop whoop. We're almost done pulling out the carpet, and then we can get to all of those pesky staples and tack strips that are left all the way around the room. And then we can lay some flooring. As you can see, if you go with the grain of the carpet, it makes your life a whole heck of a lot easier. What you saw me doing in the previous part of this video was going against it. Don't do what I did, do what I'm doing now. Much smarter play. These dogs, they always want in on the action. What a trip. Come on, Larry, get out of my way. Oh my goodness, they are hilarious. But Mom, pay attention to us. Mom, what the heck? Why aren't you paying attention to us? I'm just going to sit here in your way, and you have to. Larry says, this looks like a good spot. Come on, man. And then he lays down on the carpet again. He says, I'm going to take my last nap on the carpet because I know you're tearing it out, Mom, and it's so soft, and I don't want any hardwood floor. What the heck are you doing? Denver says, I'm just going to stand on it, and then you can't pull it up. Okay, if you really have to, I'll just accept it, Mom. But seriously, we just want soft floor. Mom, why aren't you working fast enough? Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Come on, Mom. Is there anything more loyal than a dog? I mean, seriously. Watch Denver. Every step I make, every move I make. Now that all of the carpet is pulled up, it's time to get all of those pesky staples out of the floor. And the best tool for this is a staple puller. They work phenomenal. It's worth getting it. Don't torture yourself by trying to use something else. I will tell you from my experience, life is so much better when you have the proper tools. Yep, that one right there. Although this prep work just doesn't seem quite as satisfying as you're doing it, it is so important that you do. If you do not have a flat floor to lay the next floor on, it is definitely not going to be laid properly and you are going to be unsatisfied. Do the tedious work up front so you can have a finished project that you actually love. Next on the agenda, the tack strips. And honestly, I actually used my staple puller for that, so why not, right? Don't forget to vacuum it all up before you start to put down your underlayment, folks. Otherwise, all that dirt's going to be trapped underneath, and that would be no bueno. Yay! I almost get to touch some flooring, but first, let's get the underlayment put down. And this is an extremely important part of your project because this is going to be the base and the cushion and protection underneath your floor. So it is important that you fit it properly. If you don't fit the underlayment properly, you're going to have a wonky floor. I personally use painter's tape to keep the edges of my underlayment down, and that way it doesn't get pulled away from the wall or messed up while I'm actually laying the floor. The less troublesome that the underlayment is, the better off you are. So a couple pieces of tape go a long way and are worth it. Now that the underlayment is down, we can start laying our floor. Now this is a laminate floor, and since it is a floating floor, you want to leave a little bit of space all the way around your room as you lay it. So it does have just a tiny little bit of room to move. When cutting the end pieces of your flooring, I suggest measuring to the wall, taking off 1/2 inch, marking it on the top of your flooring, and then running your line to the back of the piece of floor and cutting it from the back, as this flooring is very fragile. When choosing which side of the room to start your flooring, I would suggest starting wherever is going to be trickiest. That way you can get that area out of your way first, and you're not working towards it. You can get out that tricky work before you have the majority of your floor laid, and if you have any problems, you can solve it a lot quicker. Don't be afraid to use your pieces of flooring as a straight edge for any of the larger sections that you do have to mark, whether it be on your flooring itself or on the underlayment. Also good for you to know, there is laminate flooring that is sold with the underlayment already on it. So if you want to skip this step, feel free. It saves you a little bit of money in the long run if you do lay your own underlayment, but it is entirely up to you if you want to skip this step altogether. Time to get this tricky spot filled in here and make our cut for the railing. I used a jigsaw for this with a wood blade on it, and I'm confident that this is probably not the best way to actually use a jigsaw, but it did the trick, so winning. Boom! Tricky area is completed and we are out of the corner. Now I can show you how to lay some flooring. It's important for you to know that when you're laying laminate flooring, you do not want all of your seams to be at the same place. So once you have laid your first section of flooring, you're going to make a cut to make your final piece of that first row. That piece you are going to take and place on the opposite side of the flooring, and that pattern is going to continue on. So none of your seams are close, and the best way that I can say to do this would be to put two cut pieces of varying lengths, one shorter and one longer, and then you can put a full piece of flooring next. This is a click lock flooring, and it needs to be laid at a 20-degree angle into the piece next to it, and your tongue at the end of the board needs to be placed into the groove of the piece ahead of it. So the best way to go about this is to put it into the groove ahead of it and put it at a 20-degree angle and tamp it on the side into place. This flooring is very fragile, so using a rubber mallet is definitely the best tool for this. If you use a traditional hammer, there is a good chance that you are going to bust up that tongue, and honey, you need it to keep the floor together. I personally have found it best to lay 3 rows at a time, working the closest piece first and outward as you go. When you get to the end, you cut the next piece, lay it for you to put on the other end, and you keep going and keep going. Don't forget, you need it in at a 20-degree angle. Make sure that there are no gaps between the piece that you laid and the piece in front of it, because once you lay the next section, it's going to be very tough for you to get back. Again, when you are marking your boards, mark it on the face of the board, and then run that marking over to the back of the board. Use a square, and I used a circular saw, but your best bet would be using a table saw to cut these pieces of laminate, as it is somewhat fragile and brittle. Boom. Yep. Woohoo! That looks so much better than the carpet, and I am so happy. Now for the next part of the project. Thank you so much for visiting my channel. So happy to have you. Today we are doing a little bit more home improvement. So I decided, since I put all new floor in, that I might as well do the whole project. And one of my favorite colors happens to be like this copper orange color. So I wanted to do like copper orange and blues, bright white of course to make it all pop. So I went with this color right here. It's called Copper Mountain. I'm about to mix that paint up and pour it, and we are going to put that on all of the drywall here. All of the trim is going to get painted bright white, and I'm going to put up a chair rail right here level with the windowsill, and then that lower part of it is going to get painted white, much like the downstairs. So super exciting stuff. I cannot wait to see the finished product, and I'm so happy that you're along for the journey. See you soon. The first thing you always want to do when you are painting is to mix the paint. Whether you just bought it 5 minutes ago or it has been sitting, always make sure you mix it. Mix, 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 mix. Next, you are going to want to cut in the room. When I say cut in the room, I am referring to every area of the room that is going to be touching an area of the room that you do not want paint on. You are going to use a small angled brush to cut in the room. It's so important how you put the paint on your brush when you are cutting in. So a couple tricks for you. If you are cutting in a room, before you put paint on your brush, think about the area of the brush that is going to be against the wall. Think about the area of the brush that you do not want to touch the wall, and you want to wipe the excess paint off of the brush where you don't want it to touch, and you want a good enough amount of paint on the brush where you do want it to touch. What I do is I drop the paint and then I'll pull the paint downward with that angled brush. If you are not an experienced painter, you should have laid drop cloth before you even touch paint. You are going to be very angry with yourself if you just laid flooring and you get paint all over it. Although, another tip for you, if you do get any of this paint on the floor, it wipes right up. No big deal. Carpet, on the other hand, you're stuck with it. So definitely put down drop cloth. This depends entirely on your skill level. If you happen to have any extra underlayment from the flooring that you just laid, know that it works phenomenally as drop cloth, and as you can see, I used a folded up piece of it as the base for my paint tray and my paint cans. Now let's get to some helpful tips on how to roll paint. It is so important that you do not have an excessive amount of paint on your roller. This is one of those times where sometimes less is more. You do not want paint dripping off of your roller, and you don't want runs in your paint. So, you can always put just a little bit of extra pressure on the roller itself, and you can stretch the paint a little bit further. But again, do not load it up. You can load it up initially, but make sure you roll it out on your tray. Roll it out on your tray. You will be so happy with yourself if you do this. Some other helpful tips for you. While you are rolling your paint, make sure that you are covering up your roller lines. You will see these lines if you do not paint over them. You can also paint straight and then add a diagonal, and that covers up the lines perfectly. Again, when you are cutting in around objects or other walls, think about how you are going to have to lay your brush next to that object to cut in the paint. When you are rolling paint, it's important that you do not let that section dry before you paint the next section if it's at an obvious place on your wall. It is definitely going to leave some lines that you are going to be unhappy with if you do so. As you can see here, I'm painting the peak of the room, but then I am working that peak all the way down the wall. If I painted the entire peak at one time and then came and reworked it down the wall, you would have a very distinct line of where you started painting and then continued painting later on. This is even more important when you're using rich or dark colors, much like this orange I am working with here. Speaking of rich or dark colors, when you are painting a room, even if you are using a one-coat paint like this is definitely going to need a second coat. If this was white, it wouldn't be nearly as obvious, but this is not going to cover entirely on the first coat, even though it is a very good paint. Rich or dark colors, you definitely want to do a second coat. Whoop whoop! We are nearing the finish line of coat number 1 of Copper Mountain. And does this color not look like Utah? I seriously couldn't get enough of Utah. I needed to throw it on my walls too, I guess. But boy, oh boy, is it warm, and I am loving it. Lucky for you, I'm sure that your room isn't quite as quirky as mine, and it should be a whole heck of a lot easier for you to paint flat walls versus this triangular room that I decided would be so great to paint today. And now we get to make the whole room pop. Let's get that green trim out of here. Yuck! And let's turn it all white. Yay! I love it already. What a difference. Again, if you are not comfortable with a paintbrush freehand, now would be a great time to tape off any area that you do not want paint on. If you are not comfortable with painting trim without getting it on the wall or anything you don't want paint on, please tape off at this point. It is worth your time. I have painted a lot, so it is not worth my time, and I kind of enjoy this tedious work. But I would absolutely never discourage somebody from giving something a go. So if you do want to paint this trim freehand, go for it. Just remember, you have to think about how that brush needs to be placed on the trim itself to get the paint where you want it and not where you don't want it. Make sure you wipe off that excess paint and drop the paint at the top of the trim and pull it downward with your angled brush. I personally used a 1.5 inch angled brush to do all of this work. I also think a medium stiffness is the best brush to go with because you don't have as many squirrely hairs on the brush, and it does steady your hand while you're cutting in. Yes, you do need to put a second coat all the way around the room, and that includes where you cut in initially. Otherwise, your paint is not going to coat entirely, and you're not going to be 100% satisfied with the project itself. It's worth it. It's worth the time. I promise you. Just do it right the first time. You can hate the messenger. It's okay. You'll be happy with me in the long run. I promise. Larry is such a sweetheart. He came to keep me company. I love him. Yeah, this is how I roll. Yay! Now all we need is a second coat on all of the walls, and we are almost finished with this project. Do you love it? I know I do. And can you tell why I chose Copper Mountain? I mean, seriously. B-E-A-Beautiful. Larry wanted to give a brief demonstration on how to properly remodel pillows on the new carpet to make the perfect bed. Oh boy, is he ever adorable. And I think he loves the room. I did make them a section so that they could still feel super soft and cuddly when they aren't on one of their individual couches. Yeah, they have their own. Spoiled. I absolutely love the way that this turned out. all the little finishing touches. Trim is up. Spiral staircase is encased. Trim is back. Doers, who is so handsome? Who is so handsome? Beautiful. And Larry loves it too. Oh, babies. Say see you on the next one. Woof, woof. I hope that all of you found this video helpful in your next remodel. Thank you so much for visiting my channel. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment to tell me what you want to do next. Have an awesome day, you doer!